Your mind is lying to you right now. It's telling you stories that aren't true. It's running programs that were installed years ago, maybe decades ago, by people who didn't know any better. And those programs are destroying your life. They're keeping you small. They're keeping you afraid. They're keeping you stuck in patterns that feel like prison walls you can't see. But what if I told you that 2,000 years ago, a Roman emperor discovered 16 laws, 16 brutal truths that can completely reprogram your mind? What if I told you that these laws are so powerful, so transformative, that once you understand them, you'll never see yourself or your life the same way again? Marcus Aurelius wasn't just a ruler. He was a philosopher who spent his life examining the machinery of the human mind. And what he discovered will shatter everything you thought you knew about how to think, how to live, and how to become free. Today, you're going to learn those 16 laws. And I'm warning you now, they're brutal. They're uncomfortable. They go against everything modern culture teaches you. But they work. And by the end of this journey, your mind will never be the same. In the next hour, we're going deep into the 16 laws that Marcus Aurelius lived by. The principles that allowed him to rule an empire while maintaining inner peace, to face betrayal without bitterness, to endure loss without breaking. These aren't feel-good platitudes. These are hard truths that will challenge everything you believe about yourself. We'll explore the psychology behind each law, the philosophy that makes it work, and most importantly, how to apply it to reprogram your mind starting today. This is about breaking free from the mental prison you've been living in. This is about becoming who you were always meant to be. Let's begin. Before we dive in, if you're ready for transformation, hit that subscribe button. Leave a like if you want more content like this. Comment with one word that describes your current state of mind, and share this with someone who needs to hear these truths. Because what we're about to explore together isn't just information, it's liberation. Now, let's reprogram your mind. Let me start with something that's going to hurt. Your mind is not your friend. Right now, as you're listening to this, your mind is generating thousands of thoughts. Most of them are negative. Most of them are repetitive. Most of them are lies. And you've been believing them your entire life. Marcus Aurelius understood this with devastating clarity. He wrote in his private journals, not for publication but for his own sanity, that the first law of mental freedom is this: you are not your thoughts. You are the space in which thoughts occur. And this distinction, this seemingly simple realization, changes everything. Think about it. Right now, you have thoughts telling you who you are. Thoughts about your worth, your capabilities, your future. But where did those thoughts come from? Did you consciously choose them? Did you sit down one day and decide, I'm going to think I'm not good enough, I'm going to believe I'm broken, I'm going to assume the worst about myself? No. Those thoughts were programmed into you. By parents, by teachers, by experiences, by a culture that profits from your insecurity. And here's the brutal truth. As long as you believe those thoughts are you, as long as you identify with them, you're trapped. You're living in a mental prison where the walls are made of old programming and the bars are beliefs you never questioned. The first law Marcus discovered was this: separate yourself from your thoughts. Observe them like clouds passing in the sky. Don't fight them, don't suppress them, just watch them, notice them, and recognize that they're not truth. They're just mental events. Just noise in the system. Let me tell you about a man I once knew. He spent 40 years believing he was a coward. That thought ran so deep he organized his entire life around it. He avoided challenges. He never took risks. He stayed small and safe. And then one day, in a moment of crisis, he acted with incredible courage. He saved someone's life. And in that moment, he realized the thought that had ruled him for 4 decades was a lie. It was just a story, a program, and it had stolen 40 years of his life. How many years has your mental programming stolen from you? How many opportunities have you missed because of thoughts you never questioned? How much suffering have you endured because you believed the voice in your head was telling the truth? Marcus faced this every single day. He was the most powerful man in the world, and yet his mind would generate thoughts of inadequacy, thoughts of fear, thoughts of doubt. The difference is he didn't believe them. He watched them. He observed them. He let them pass. And in doing so, he remained free. This is where reprogramming begins. Not with positive affirmations, not with trying to replace negative thoughts with positive ones, but with recognition, with seeing thoughts for what they are. Temporary, conditioned responses that have no inherent truth or power unless you give them that power. The second law builds on this. Your emotions are not facts. They're signals. They're information. But they're not reality. You can feel terrified and still be safe. You can feel worthless and still be valuable. You can feel hopeless and still have a future full of possibility. Your emotions are real, but they're not reliable narrators of truth. Marcus wrote something profound about this. He said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." What he's saying is that your emotional suffering is created by your interpretation, not by reality itself. Change the interpretation, change the suffering. Think about the last time you were devastated by something. Maybe a rejection, maybe a failure, maybe a betrayal. In that moment, your emotions were screaming at you. This is the worst thing that could happen. This proves something terrible about you. This means your life is over, and you believed it. You let those emotions dictate your reality. But what if you'd stepped back? What if you'd observed those emotions without becoming them? What if you'd said, "I'm feeling devastated right now, but that feeling is not a fact about my life. It's just a temporary state. It will pass. And beneath it, I'm still whole. I'm still capable. I'm still moving forward." That's the second law. Emotions are weather. Sometimes it storms. Sometimes it's calm. But you are not the weather. You are the sky that contains it. And the sky is never damaged by the storm. The third law is perhaps the most brutal of all. You are responsible for your mind. Not your parents, not your past, not your circumstances. You, right now, in this moment. You are the only one who can reprogram your mental patterns. And until you accept that responsibility, you will remain trapped. I know this is hard to hear, because it's easier to blame. It's easier to say, "I'm this way because of what happened to me, because of how I was raised, because of the hand I was dealt." And yes, those things shaped you. They installed the programs, but they don't have to run your life anymore, because you have the power right now to start changing them. Marcus had every excuse to be bitter. His father died when he was young. He was thrust into power he never wanted. He was surrounded by corruption, betrayal, and incompetence. He lost children. He lost friends. He lost battles. And yet he chose every single day to take responsibility for his mind. He chose to reprogram his responses. He chose freedom over victimhood. And that's the choice you have right now. You can keep running the old programs, keep believing the old thoughts, keep reacting from old patterns. Or you can wake up. You can see the programs for what they are, and you can start writing new code. This is not easy work. This is not a quick fix. Reprogramming your mind is like learning to walk again. At first, every step feels foreign. Every new thought pattern feels forced. But with practice, with consistency, with relentless dedication, the new programs become automatic. And one day you wake up and realize, "I'm different. I'm free. I'm not running on autopilot anymore." The fourth law is about attention. What you focus on grows. Your mind is like a garden. Whatever you water will flourish. If you water negative thoughts, you'll grow a garden of suffering. If you water gratitude, possibility, and strength, you'll grow a garden of peace. Marcus practiced this obsessively. Every morning, he would direct his attention deliberately. He would focus on virtue, on wisdom, on what was within his control. He would starve the thoughts that didn't serve him by refusing to give them attention, and he would feed the thoughts that aligned with who he wanted to be. Most people do the opposite. They obsess over what hurt them. They replay conversations that went wrong. They catastrophize about the future. They feed every fear, every doubt, every insecurity. And then they wonder why their mental garden is full of weeds. The brutal truth is this: If your mind is a mess, it's because you've been watering weeds. And the only way to change that is to become ruthlessly selective about where you place your attention. Stop feeding the negative loops. Stop rehearsing old wounds. Stop imagining worst-case scenarios. Start focusing on what you can control. Start noticing what's working. Start looking for evidence of your strength instead of your weakness. This isn't toxic positivity. This isn't pretending problems don't exist. This is strategic attention management. This is understanding that your brain will create more of whatever you focus on. So focus wisely. The fifth law completes this first awakening. Your current programming is not permanent. You are not stuck. You are not broken beyond repair. You are simply running outdated software. And software can be updated. Programs can be rewritten. Patterns can be changed. But here's what most people don't understand. Change doesn't happen through insight alone. It happens through practice, through repetition, through daily, consistent effort to think differently, respond differently, be differently. You have to catch yourself running the old program and consciously choose the new one. Again, and again, and again, until the new program becomes automatic. Marcus didn't become a Stoic sage by reading philosophy. He became one by practicing it every single day, by catching his mind in the act of suffering and redirecting it, by noticing when he was about to react from old programming and choosing a different response, by failing, learning, and trying again. And that's what this journey is about. Not just understanding these laws, but living them, practicing them, making them the new operating system of your mind. Because knowledge without application is just entertainment, but knowledge applied consistently becomes transformation. So here we are at the beginning. You now know that you are not your thoughts, that your emotions are not facts, that you are responsible for reprogramming your mind, that attention is power, and that change is possible. These 5 laws alone, if you really absorb them, will begin to crack open the prison you've been living in. But we're just getting started. There are 11 more laws to explore, 11 more brutal truths that will complete your reprogramming, and each one will take you deeper into freedom. So take a breath, let these first 5 settle, and prepare yourself for what's coming next. Because we're about to go to places most people never dare to look. Now we enter dangerous territory, because we're going to examine the machinery of your suffering, not to dwell in it, but to understand it so completely that it loses its power over you. Marcus Aurelius spent years dissecting his own pain, and what he discovered was revolutionary. He discovered that suffering has a structure, and once you understand that structure, you can dismantle it. The 6th law is this: suffering is always caused by resistance to what is, not by what is itself, but by your refusal to accept it. Marcus wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." What he meant is that the obstacle is not the problem. Your resistance to the obstacle is the problem. Think about physical pain for a moment. When you resist it, when you tense up against it, it intensifies. But when you relax into it, when you accept it, something strange happens. The pain is still there, but the suffering decreases. The same is true for emotional and psychological pain. Someone betrays you. That's the event. Your mind immediately goes to war with reality. This shouldn't have happened. This isn't fair. They had no right. How could they do this to me? And with each thought, each layer of resistance, you deepen your suffering. The betrayal hurt you once, but your resistance to the betrayal hurts you 1,000 times. What if instead you simply accepted it, not condoned it, not pretended it was okay, but accepted that it happened, that this is now reality, that you cannot change the past? That resistance is futile and only multiplies pain. What if you said, "This happened, I don't like it, but it's real, and now I must deal with what is, not with what I wish were true"? This is one of the most difficult practices in all of Stoicism. Because we're wired to resist pain. We're wired to fight against things we don't like. But Marcus discovered that this instinct, This automatic resistance is the source of most human suffering, and learning to release resistance is like learning to breathe underwater. It feels impossible until you do it, and then it changes everything. The seventh law builds directly on this. You suffer most when you argue with reality. Byron Katie, a modern teacher, put it simply: when you argue with reality, you lose. But only 100% of the time. Marcus knew this 2,000 years ago. He wrote, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs." Now, this doesn't mean you become passive. It doesn't mean you don't work to change things. It means you start from acceptance, not resistance. You acknowledge what is, and from that place of clarity, you act. But you don't waste energy fighting against the fact that things are the way they are. Let me give you an example. You lose your job. That's reality. You can spend weeks arguing with it. This is so unfair. The economy is terrible. My boss was incompetent. I worked so hard. Why is this happening to me? Or you can accept it. I lost my job. That's what happened. I don't like it, but it's real. Now what's my next move? See the difference? In the first scenario, you're stuck in a mental loop of resistance. You're wasting energy on unchangeable past. You're marinating in victimhood. In the second scenario, you've accepted reality and moved directly to action. You've conserved your energy for what matters, moving forward. This is the architecture of suffering. Resistance creates friction. Friction creates heat. Heat creates suffering. Remove the resistance and the suffering dissolves. The situation might still be difficult. The emotions might still be uncomfortable. But the suffering, that extra layer of psychological torment, disappears. The eighth law is about interpretation. Nothing is inherently good or bad until you label it. This is perhaps Marcus's most quoted insight. He wrote, "Everything is neither good nor bad, but thinking makes it so." Or as he put it more precisely, if you are distressed by any external thing, it is not the thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it. This law is brutal because it removes all your excuses. You can no longer blame circumstances for your suffering, because circumstances are neutral. They're just events. You add the meaning, you create the good or bad, and if you created it, you can uncreate it. I know what you're thinking. What about real tragedies? What about loss, death, violence, injustice? Surely those things are objectively bad. And from a societal, moral perspective, yes, we label certain things as bad. But from the perspective of your inner peace, from the perspective of your suffering, even those things only devastate you to the degree that you resist them and interpret them in ways that compound pain. A person dies. That's a fact. The grief is natural. But the suffering, the belief that life is now meaningless, that you can't go on, that this proves the universe is cruel, those are interpretations. Those are labels. And those labels are optional. Marcus lost multiple children. In his era, this was common but no less devastating. He grieved. But he didn't add layers of interpretation that would have destroyed him. He didn't tell himself stories about what their deaths meant. He accepted loss as part of the human experience. He found meaning in honoring their memory through how he lived. He transformed grief into dedication rather than letting it become despair. This is the power of understanding that interpretation creates suffering. You can't always control what happens, but you can always control what you make it mean. And meaning determines everything. The ninth law is about perception. How you see determines what you suffer. Marcus practiced something he called objective representation. When something disturbed him, he would strip away all emotional language, all judgment, all interpretation, and describe only the bare physical facts. For example, someone insults him. His first instinct might be, "I've been humiliated, disrespected, attacked." But with objective representation, he would say, "A person made sounds with their mouth. Air vibrated. My ears detected the vibration. That's all that actually happened. Everything else is my addition." This practice is revolutionary because it shows you how much of your suffering is self-generated. When you strip away the story, strip away the interpretation, strip away the emotional overlay, what's left? Usually something far less painful than what you created in your mind. Try this right now. Think of something that's bothering you, really bothering you. Now describe it with pure objectivity, just the facts, just what actually happened in physical reality. No judgments, no meanings, no implications, just what is. You'll find that the objective reality is almost always less terrible than your mental representation of it. Your mind has been adding layers, creating stories, generating meanings that multiply your pain. And when you see that clearly, when you catch yourself doing it, you can stop. You can return to what is, and what is usually manageable. The 10th law is about time. You only suffer in the imagined past or future, never in the present moment. This is one of Marcus's most profound discoveries. He wrote, "Confine yourself to the present. If you can cut free of impressions that cling to the mind, free of the future and the past, you can make yourself, as Empedocles says, a sphere rejoicing in the round stillness of surrounding silence." What he's pointing to is this. Right now, in this exact moment, are you okay? Not yesterday, not tomorrow, right now. Usually the answer is yes. You're breathing. You're alive. You're fundamentally okay. The suffering comes from replaying the past or rehearsing the future in your mind. Someone hurt you last week, that's past, it's not happening now. But you're making it happen now by replaying it, by reliving it, by giving it presence in this moment. Or you're anxious about something that might happen next month. That's future. It's not here. It hasn't happened. But you're experiencing suffering now about something that doesn't exist yet and may never exist. Marcus trained himself to return constantly to the present moment, to ask, what is actually here right now? What is actually required of me in this moment? Not what happened, not what might happen, what is. And in the present moment, life is almost always simpler, clearer, more manageable than the mind makes it. This is not about living in denial. This is not about ignoring real problems. This is about understanding that when you're fully present, you're not suffering. Suffering requires time travel. It requires leaving now and going into the past to regret or into the future to fear. And that time travel is optional. You can choose to stay here, to deal with what's actually in front of you, to live in reality instead of in your head. These 5 laws, 6 through 10, reveal the architecture of suffering. Suffering comes from resistance, from arguing with reality, from the labels you assign, from distorted perception, from leaving the present moment. And once you see this architecture clearly, once you understand how you build your own suffering, you gain the power to stop building it. But understanding is not enough. You have to practice. You have to catch yourself resisting and choose acceptance. Catch yourself arguing with reality and choose acknowledgement. Catch yourself labeling and choose neutrality. Catch yourself distorting and choose objectivity. Catch yourself time traveling and choose presence. This is the work. This is what reprogramming looks like. Not a single insight that changes you forever, but 1,000 small choices made consistently that gradually rewire your mental patterns until suffering becomes the exception rather than the rule. And now we're halfway through. 10 laws down. 6 to go. And what's coming next will take everything we've learned and show you how to transform it into practical power. How to become someone who not only understands these truths, but lives them. How to reprogram your mind so deeply that your entire life changes. Take a moment. Let these laws settle. Notice which ones hit hardest. Notice where you're still resisting, because that resistance is showing you exactly where you need to work. And the work is about to get even more intense. We're now entering the transformation zone. Everything up to this point has been about understanding thoughts, understanding suffering, understanding the mechanics of your mind. But now we shift. Now we learn how to actually change. How to take these brutal laws and turn them into living practices that reprogram your entire mental operating system. The 11th law is about action. You become what you repeatedly do. Not what you think, not what you intend, not what you wish, what you do. Marcus wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." This law is brutal because it removes the comfort of philosophy without practice. It demands embodiment. You can understand every law in this video. You can agree with every principle. You can feel inspired by every insight. But if you don't act differently, nothing changes. Your mind doesn't reprogram through knowledge. It reprograms through action, through new behaviors that create new neural pathways that become new automatic responses. Think about it. You've had the same mental patterns for years, maybe decades. Those patterns are deep grooves worn into your brain through repetition. You can't erase them by thinking about them. You have to create new grooves, deeper grooves, grooves that eventually become the default path. How? Through deliberate, consistent practice, through catching yourself about to react from an old pattern and forcing yourself to respond from a new one. Through doing this so many times that the new response becomes automatic. Through becoming, through action, the person you want to be. Marcus didn't just think about virtue. He practiced it. Every interaction was an opportunity to embody his principles. Every challenge was a chance to act from his highest self. He didn't wait to feel ready. He didn't wait to be perfect. He acted, and through action, he transformed. So the question for you is, what are you actually doing? Not what are you thinking about doing? Not what you plan to do someday. What are you doing right now, today, to reprogram your mind? Are you catching your negative thoughts and redirecting them? Are you practicing acceptance when things don't go your way? Are you staying present instead of time traveling? Or are you just consuming information and hoping it will somehow magically change you? The 11th law demands accountability. It demands that you stop being a passive student and become an active practitioner. Because transformation is not a spectator sport. It's a full contact engagement with reality that requires you to show up and do the work every single day. The 12th law is about consistency. Small actions, repeated daily, create massive transformation. This is where most people fail. They want dramatic change through dramatic action. They want to reprogram their mind in a weekend workshop or through a single powerful experience. But that's not how minds work. Minds change through repetition, through steady, consistent, unglamorous practice. Marcus had a morning ritual. Every single morning, without exception, he would prepare his mind for the day. He would remind himself of his principles. He would anticipate challenges. He would set his intention. This wasn't exciting. It wasn't dramatic. But it worked. Because consistency compounds. Think of it like going to the gym. One workout doesn't transform your body, but one workout a day for a year absolutely does. The same is true for your mind. One moment of conscious thought redirection doesn't reprogram you, but one moment every hour, every day for months creates a completely new mental operating system. This is the path, not seeking peak experiences, not waiting for motivation, but showing up consistently, doing the small practices, trusting the process even when you don't see immediate results. Because the results are cumulative. They're building beneath the surface. And one day, you wake up and realize, I'm different. I don't react the way I used to. I don't suffer the way I used to. The programming has changed. The 13th law is about environment. You become like what you surround yourself with. Marcus knew this. He carefully chose his teachers, his advisors, the people he spent time with. Not because he was elitist, but because he understood that environment shapes you, that you absorb the thoughts, the beliefs, the patterns of those around you. Who are you surrounding yourself with? What are you consuming? What podcasts, books, videos, conversations are you feeding your mind? Are they reinforcing your old programming or supporting your new one? Because if you're trying to reprogram your mind while constantly exposing yourself to content and people that reinforce your old patterns, you're working against yourself. This doesn't mean you cut off everyone who doesn't think like you. But it does mean you become intentional. You curate your mental environment the way you'd curate your physical one. You spend more time with people who embody what you're trying to become. You consume content that reinforces the principles you're practicing. You protect your mind from inputs that trigger your old programming. Marcus limited his exposure to the chaos of Rome. He created spaces of solitude where he could think clearly. He surrounded himself with philosophical texts that reminded him of truth. He was strategic about his mental environment. And you must be too. The 14th law is about failure. Every relapse into old programming is data, not defeat. This might be the most compassionate of all the laws. Because you will fail. You will catch yourself running old programs. You will react when you meant to respond. You will resist when you meant to accept. You will suffer when you meant to stay free. And when that happens, most people beat themselves up. They interpret failure as proof that change is impossible. But Marcus saw it differently. He saw every mistake as information, as feedback, as an opportunity to learn and adjust. He wrote, "The obstacle is the way. Every time you slip back into old patterns, you're being shown exactly where more work is needed. You're being given precise information about which programs are still strong, which practices need more repetition, which situations trigger your automatic responses. So when you fail, don't collapse. Don't use it as evidence that you're broken. Use it as data. Ask, what just happened? What triggered that response? What was I thinking right before I reacted? What could I do differently next time?" And then practice that different response in your mind. Rehearse it. Prepare for the next time that situation arises. This is how you rewire. Not by never failing, but by failing, learning, and adjusting. By treating your mind like a scientist treats an experiment. With curiosity, with patience, with a commitment to iteration and improvement. The 15th law is about identity. You must become the person for whom these practices are natural. This is the deepest level of reprogramming. Most people try to change behaviors while maintaining the same identity. They say, "I'm trying to be more patient, but I'm just an anxious person. I'm trying to be more positive, but I'm just a pessimist." And as long as you hold that identity, behavior change will be forced, effortful, unsustainable. Marcus understood that true transformation requires identity shift. He didn't see himself as someone trying to be stoic. He saw himself as a stoic. That was his identity. And from that identity, stoic behaviors flowed naturally. You must do the same. You must stop seeing yourself as someone with bad programming who's trying to change, and start seeing yourself as someone who is already free, already wise, already capable, who's simply remembering who you really are. This isn't fake it till you make it. This is recognizing that your current identity is just as constructed as any new one would be. It's just familiar. You are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not your old patterns. Those are things you did, things you experienced, but they're not who you are. Who you are is the awareness behind all of that, the consciousness that's been there your whole life, the essential self that was there before any programming was installed. And from that place of essential self, you choose a new identity. You decide who you want to be. And you start acting as if you already are that person. Not in a delusional way, but in a way that creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. You act with integrity because you're a person of integrity. You respond with wisdom because you're a wise person. You maintain peace because you're a peaceful person. And eventually, through action and repetition, the identity becomes real. These 5 laws, 11 through 15, are your transformation protocols. Action creates change. Consistency compounds. Environment shapes you. Failure teaches you. Identity defines you. Master these 5, and you'll have the tools to reprogram any aspect of your mind you choose. But there's one more law, the 16th, the most important one, the one that ties everything together and makes all the others possible. And that's what we're going to explore now. We've come to the final law, the law that Marcus Aurelius considered the foundation of everything else. The law that, if you truly understand it and live it, makes you unbreakable. This is the law that the emperor returned to again and again in his darkest moments, when the weight of empire threatened to crush him, when betrayal cut deepest, when loss felt unbearable. The 16th law is this: you are going to die, and that makes everything else irrelevant. Marcus wrote, You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. This is the ultimate reprogramming tool, the ultimate perspective shift, the ultimate truth that cuts through all the noise and reveals what actually matters. When you truly internalize your mortality, when you stop treating it as some distant theoretical concept and feel it as immediate reality, everything changes. The petty concerns evaporate, the social anxieties dissolve, the need for approval disappears. The fear of failure becomes laughable, because you realize I'm going to die, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe in 50 years. But it's coming. And when it comes, will I have wasted my precious finite time suffering over things that don't matter? This isn't morbid. This is the most life-affirming truth you can hold. Because when you remember you're mortal, you remember you're alive. When you remember time is limited, you stop wasting it. When you remember death is certain, you start really living. Marcus practiced memento mori, remember death, every single day. He kept death at his shoulder as a constant companion, not to be depressed, not to be fatalistic, but to be awake, to be present, to be freed from the tyranny of trivial concerns. Think about the things causing you suffering right now. Think about the worries, the resentments, the fears, the insecurities. Now imagine you have 1 month to live. How many of those concerns would still matter? How much of that suffering would you still choose to carry? Almost none of it, because proximity to death clarifies what's real and what's illusion. And here's the brutal truth. You do have limited time. You just don't know how limited. You're treating life like it's infinite, like you have forever to forgive, forever to love, forever to become who you're meant to be, forever to stop suffering and start living. But you don't. You have now, this moment, this precious, unrepeatable moment, and you're wasting it on mental programs that don't serve you. The 16th law is an invitation to wake up, to stop sleepwalking through life running outdated programs, to realize that your mortality is not a threat, it's a gift, it's what makes life sacred, it's what makes this moment irreplaceable. Marcus faced death constantly, as a military leader, as someone living in an era of plague, as someone who lost loved ones regularly. And instead of letting that make him cynical or nihilistic, he let it make him grateful. He let it make him present. He let it make him free. He wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." How many people die without ever really living? How many people reach their final moments and realize they spent their entire life trapped in mental prisons of their own creation, trapped in old stories, trapped in old pain, trapped in old patterns, never free, never fully alive, never fully themselves? That doesn't have to be you, because now you know. Now you have the 16 laws. Now you have the tools to reprogram your mind. The question is, will you use them? Will you actually do the work? Or will you consume this information, feel temporarily inspired, and then go right back to your old programming? Marcus wrote something powerful about this. He said, "People look for retreats for themselves, in the country, by the coast, or in the hills. There is nowhere that a person can find a more peaceful and trouble-free retreat than in his own mind, especially if he has within himself the kind of thoughts that let him dip into total relaxation. I, for one, give myself that sort of retreat all the time." What he's saying is that freedom is not found in external circumstances. It's not found by escaping to some perfect environment where nothing triggers you. It's found by transforming your mind so completely that you carry peace with you wherever you go, so that no person, no situation, no circumstance can disturb your inner tranquility. And that's what these 16 laws offer you: a complete reprogramming, a total transformation, a way to become so internally free that external chaos becomes irrelevant. Let me take you deeper into Marcus's hidden wisdom, because there's something he understood that most people miss. He understood that suffering is optional, but discomfort is inevitable. The goal is not to never feel pain. The goal is to never add suffering to pain. Pain is physical. Pain is emotional. Pain is part of being human. But suffering is what happens when you resist pain, when you tell stories about pain, when you make pain mean something about your worth or your future. Suffering is pain plus resistance. And resistance is always optional. Marcus experienced tremendous pain. The pain of duty he didn't want. The pain of leadership in impossible circumstances. The pain of loving people who disappointed him. The pain of losing children. But he didn't add suffering to that pain. He felt it. He honored it, and he let it move through him without letting it define him. This is mastery, not the absence of difficult emotions, but the absence of the stories that turn difficult emotions into prolonged suffering. Feel sad and know it will pass. Feel angry and channel it into constructive action. Feel fear and act anyway. Feel grief and let it soften you rather than harden you. Marcus also understood something profound about power and control. He knew that the only true power you have is power over your own mind. Everything else is borrowed. Everything else can be taken. Your possessions, your position, your relationships, your health, even your life. All of it is temporary. All of it is ultimately outside your control. But your mind, your interpretation, your response, your choice of where to place your attention, that's yours. That can never be taken unless you give it away. And most people give it away constantly. They hand control of their inner state to whoever happens to trigger them. They let circumstances dictate their peace. They outsource their emotional well-being to things they can't control. Marcus refused to do this. He kept his power where it belonged, inside. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is the secret. This is what makes you unbreakable. When you realize that your peace, your worth, your fundamental okayness doesn't depend on anything external, you become free." And here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop needing things to be a certain way to be happy, you actually become more effective at changing things. Because you're no longer acting from desperation. You're no longer acting from fear. You're acting from clarity, from strength, from a place of already being whole. Marcus led Rome from this place. He made decisions not from a need to prove himself or protect his ego or maintain his power, but from a place of service, from wisdom, from compassion. And that's why his meditations have survived 2,000 years, because they weren't written by someone trying to convince others. They were written by someone trying to remind himself. And that authenticity, that rawness, that honesty, is what makes them timeless. And that's what makes these 16 laws timeless. They're not theories. They're not ideals. They're battle-tested principles forged in the crucible of real life by someone who had every reason to be bitter, angry, and broken, but chose wisdom instead. So now you have them. All 16 laws, the complete reprogramming protocol, the map to mental freedom. And the only question that matters is, what will you do with them? Because information without application is just entertainment. These laws are only powerful if you use them, if you practice them, if you make them the foundation of how you think, respond, and live. Your mind has been programmed by your past, by your culture, by random experiences that carved deep grooves into your consciousness. And those programs have been running on autopilot, creating suffering, limiting possibility, keeping you small. But now you see them. You understand how they work. You have the tools to rewrite them. The question is, will you? Will you commit to this work? Will you catch yourself thinking from old patterns and consciously choose new ones? Will you practice these laws daily until they become automatic? Will you become someone for whom wisdom is not something you seek, but something you embody? Marcus didn't have a choice. He was thrust into circumstances that demanded transformation. But you do have a choice. You can stay as you are, or you can become who you're capable of being. The 16 laws light the path, but you have to walk it. Theory is beautiful. Philosophy is inspiring, but without practical application, it's all just noise. So let's talk about what living these 16 laws actually looks like in your daily life. Let's talk about how to take these brutal truths and weave them into the fabric of your everyday existence until they become as natural as breathing. First, you need a morning practice. This is non-negotiable. Marcus started every day by preparing his mind, and so must you. Before you check your phone, before you engage with anyone, before the chaos of the world floods in, you give yourself 10 to 15 minutes to reset your programming. Here's what that looks like. You sit somewhere quiet. You take a few deep breaths to arrive in your body. And then you review the laws. Not all 16 every day, but maybe 3 or 4 that you're currently working on. You don't just read them. You feel them. You visualize situations that might arise today and practice responding from these principles. For example, you know you have a difficult conversation coming up. You visualize it triggering your old pattern: defensiveness, reactivity, emotional flooding. Then you pause. You remember, I am not my thoughts. My emotions are not facts. I choose my response. And you visualize yourself responding differently, calmly, wisely, from your highest self. This mental rehearsal is everything, because in the heat of the moment, you won't rise to the level of your aspirations. You'll fall to the level of your training. So you train every morning. You program the new responses. You strengthen the new neural pathways. You become, through visualization and commitment, the person you're choosing to be. Second, you create a practice of noticing throughout the day. Set alarms on your phone. 3 or 4 times a day, have an alarm go off with a simple question. Am I running old programming right now? When that alarm goes off, you stop. You check in. You notice what you're thinking, what you're feeling, how you're interpreting the events of your day. And if you catch yourself in an old pattern, you consciously redirect. This is the work, not a one-time transformation, but 1,000 micro-corrections throughout your day. Each time you catch yourself and redirect, you strengthen the new program. Each time you let the old program run unchecked, you reinforce it. So you stay vigilant, you stay present, you stay committed to noticing. Third, you keep a daily log. At the end of each day, you spend 5 minutes writing. Not a diary, not a journal of events, but a practice log. You write down moments when you successfully applied one of the laws, moments when you failed to apply them, and what you learned from both. This might sound tedious, but it's transformative, because it keeps you accountable. It shows you patterns. It reveals which laws you're integrating and which ones you're still resisting. And over time, you'll see progress. You'll see that situations that used to wreck you barely register. You'll see that you're responding with wisdom more often than reacting from old wounds. You'll see the reprogramming happening. Fourth, you use triggers as teachers. Most people try to avoid their triggers. They structure their life to minimize situations that activate old programming. But that's not reprogramming. That's avoidance. And avoidance keeps the old programs alive in the shadows. Instead, you welcome triggers as opportunities. Someone says something that would normally make you defensive. That's your chance to practice the pause. That's your chance to observe your automatic response without acting on it. That's your chance to choose differently. The trigger is not the enemy. The trigger is the gym where you build mental strength. Marcus wrote about this. He said that difficult people are like training partners in a gymnasium. They're showing you exactly where you're weak so you can get stronger. So stop avoiding difficulty. Stop trying to create a life where nothing bothers you. Instead, build a mind that can be bothered by things without being controlled by them. Fifth, you practice radical responsibility. Every single time you suffer, you ask, how am I creating this? What story am I telling? What am I resisting? What am I making this mean? And you take full ownership of your mental state. This doesn't mean bad things aren't happening. It means you stop blaming external circumstances for your internal experience. Because blame is giving away your power. Blame is saying, I'm a victim. I have no control. I'm at the mercy of people and situations. And as long as you believe that, you're trapped. But when you take full responsibility, when you say, my suffering is mine, my interpretation is mine, my response is mine, you reclaim your power. You become the author of your experience. And from that place, real change becomes possible. Sixth, you find a community. This work is hard to do alone. Find people who are on the same path, people who understand these principles, people who will call you out when you're running old programming, people who will celebrate your growth, people who will remind you of who you're becoming when you forget. This doesn't have to be in person. It can be online. It can be a single friend. It can be a group. But you need witnesses. You need people who see you practicing, because accountability accelerates transformation, and isolation reinforces old patterns. 7th, you practice memento mori daily. You remember you're going to die, not in a depressing way, but as a clarifying practice. You ask yourself, if this were my last day, would I spend it suffering over this? Would I waste it resenting this person? Would I let this fear stop me? Almost always the answer is no. And that answer frees you. It shows you that most of your suffering is about things that don't matter in the face of mortality. And when you see that clearly, you can let it go. You can return your attention to what's real, what's meaningful, what's worth your precious limited time. 8th, you reframe obstacles as assignments. Every difficulty that arises you see as the universe giving you exactly what you need to practice right now. Someone disappoints you? That's your assignment in acceptance. You fail at something? That's your assignment in resilience. You're rejected? That's your assignment in self-worth. This perspective transforms your relationship with difficulty. Instead of thinking, why is this happening to me? You think, what is this teaching me? How is this making me stronger? What quality am I being called to develop? And suddenly obstacles become opportunities. Difficulties become doorways. Resistance becomes curriculum. 9th, you protect your attention like it's your most valuable resource. Because it is. Your attention creates your reality. Where you place it determines what grows in your mind. So you become ruthless about what you consume, who you listen to, what you focus on. You stop hate scrolling. You stop consuming content that reinforces old victim patterns. You stop engaging with people who pull you into drama. You curate your mental environment with the same care you'd curate your physical health. Because your attention is what you feed your mind, and what you feed grows. 10th, you celebrate small wins. Most people only acknowledge huge transformations, but real change happens in tiny increments. So you celebrate every time you catch yourself and redirect. Every time you pause instead of react. Every time you choose acceptance over resistance. Every time you stay present instead of time traveling. These small wins compound. These small wins are the transformation happening, and acknowledging them reinforces the new programming. It tells your brain, this is what we're doing now. This is who we're becoming, and your brain will create more of what you celebrate. 11th, you extend compassion to yourself. You're going to mess up. A lot. You're going to forget these laws. You're going to run old programs. You're going to suffer when you know better. And when that happens, you don't beat yourself up. You don't use it as evidence that you're broken or that change is impossible. You treat yourself the way Marcus treated himself. With patience, with understanding, with a commitment to keep practicing regardless of how many times you fall. Because transformation is not a linear path. It's a spiral. You'll revisit the same lessons at deeper levels. You'll work on the same patterns from different angles, and that's okay. That's the process. 12th, you teach what you're learning. One of the fastest ways to integrate these laws is to share them, not in a preachy way, but when you see someone suffering from the same patterns you're working on, you gently offer what you're learning. You share your experience. You point to possibility. This does two things. It helps others, and it reinforces your own transformation. Because teaching requires you to articulate clearly, to examine your own understanding, to live what you're teaching. And that level of engagement deepens your practice exponentially. Finally, you remember that this is a lifelong practice. You're not trying to achieve some permanent state where you never suffer again. You're building a relationship with your mind where you notice suffering faster, redirect quicker, and return to peace more easily. It's a practice you'll do for the rest of your life. And that's not a burden. That's a gift. Because every day you get to wake up and choose who you want to be. Every moment you get to practice freedom. Every challenge you face is an opportunity to apply these laws and watch them work. You're not trying to reach some destination where the work is done. You're learning to love the work itself, to see it as the point, to recognize that the practice of becoming is the reward. This is what living the 16 laws looks like. Not perfect, not easy, but profoundly transformative. It's taking ancient wisdom and making it contemporary. It's taking brutal truths and turning them into daily practices. It's taking who you were and consciously, deliberately becoming who you're meant to be. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to be perfect at it. You don't have to master all 16 laws at once. You just have to start. Pick one law, practice it for a week, feel the shift. Then add another. Build momentum. Trust the process. And watch as your mind, slowly but surely, reprograms itself into a source of peace instead of suffering. We've traveled far together through these 16 brutal laws. We've dismantled the architecture of suffering. We've examined the machinery of the mind. We've explored ancient wisdom and practical application. And now we stand at the threshold of something profound. The threshold between who you've been and who you're choosing to become. Marcus Aurelius never sought to be remembered. He wrote his meditations in private, never intending them for publication. He was simply a man trying to survive the chaos of life with his sanity and integrity intact. He was working on himself, reminding himself, teaching himself how to be free in a world that constantly conspired to trap him. And yet his words survived. His practices endured. His wisdom echoes through 2 millennia because it touches something universal. The human struggle to be at peace in a turbulent world. The human desire to be free despite circumstances. The human capacity to transform through understanding and practice. You now hold that same capacity. These 16 laws are not just historical curiosities. They're not just philosophical ideas. They're living tools. Practical technologies for mental freedom. And they work. They worked for an emperor facing the collapse of civilization. They've worked for countless practitioners across centuries. And they'll work for you if you use them. But here's the thing. Knowing these laws changes nothing. Understanding them intellectually is just the first step. The transformation, the real reprogramming, only happens through practice, through daily, consistent, unglamorous repetition until these new patterns become automatic, until wisdom becomes your default response instead of suffering. And I want to be honest with you, this work is not easy. It would be dishonest to pretend otherwise. You're undoing a lifetime of conditioning. You're rewiring neural pathways carved deep by years of repetition. You're going against the current of your culture, which profits from your suffering, from your insecurity, from your endless consumption of solutions that don't solve anything. You will face resistance from your own mind, from people who prefer you stay as you were, from circumstances that seem designed to pull you back into old patterns. And in those moments, you'll question whether it's worth it, whether change is even possible, whether you should just accept that this is who you are. But I'm telling you now, it's worth it. The freedom on the other side of this work is worth every uncomfortable moment. The peace you'll find is worth every failed attempt. The person you'll become is worth every hour of practice. Because here's what awaits you. A life where people's opinions don't control you, where circumstances don't define you, where fear doesn't stop you, where suffering is no longer your default response to difficulty, where you walk through the world with a quiet confidence that comes not from arrogance, but from deep self-knowledge, where you're finally, truly free. Marcus found that freedom while ruling an empire, while losing children, while betrayed by those he trusted, while facing impossible challenges. If he could find it in those circumstances, you can find it in yours. The principles are the same. The practices are the same. The capacity for transformation is the same. And you don't have to do it perfectly. You don't have to master everything at once. You just have to start. Today. Right now. With one law. With one practice. With one conscious choice to respond differently than you've responded before. Maybe that means catching one negative thought today and redirecting it. Maybe that means pausing once before reacting. Maybe that means spending 5 minutes this evening reviewing your day and noticing your patterns. It doesn't matter how small the start is. What matters is that you start, because momentum builds, small changes compound, and one day, you'll look back and barely recognize the person you were. You'll remember how much power you gave to others, how much time you wasted suffering over things that didn't matter, how trapped you felt in your own mind, and you'll be grateful. Grateful for the moment you decided to change, grateful for the practice that freed you, grateful for the brutal laws that showed you the way. Marcus wrote something beautiful toward the end of his life. He said, "Soon you'll be ashes or bones, a mere name at most, and even that just a sound, an echo. The things we want in life are empty, stale, trivial." What he meant is that in the face of death, in the face of the ultimate reality, most of what we suffer over is revealed as meaningless. And that revelation is not depressing. It's liberating. Because when you see clearly what actually matters, you stop wasting energy on what doesn't. When you remember you're mortal, you start really living. When you realize your time is finite, you stop spending it in self-created misery. You have limited days left. I don't know how many. You don't know how many. But they're numbered, and every single one you spend trapped in old programming running on autopilot, suffering needlessly, is a day you don't get back, is a day wasted, is a betrayal of the gift of consciousness you've been given. So here's my final invitation. Don't waste another day. Don't wait until circumstances are perfect. Don't wait until you feel ready. Don't wait until you've suffered enough to finally commit to change. Start now. Today. This moment. Choose one of these 16 laws. Practice it. Feel it. Make it real in your life. And then come back. Come back to this video. Come back to these principles. Come back to the practice. Because this is not a one-time thing. This is a lifelong commitment to freedom. A daily choice to be conscious instead of automatic. A moment-by-moment decision to respond from wisdom instead of reacting from wounds. The door is open. Marcus opened it 2,000 years ago, and it's never closed. It's waiting for you. All you have to do is step through. All you have to do is begin. All you have to do is commit to becoming the person you know you're capable of being. And when you do, when you really commit, when you make these laws the foundation of your life, something miraculous happens. You become unbreakable. Not because nothing hurts you, but because you've learned how not to hurt yourself. You've learned that suffering is optional. You've learned that peace is always available. You've learned that freedom is your birthright. So take it, claim it, live it. And when you do, share it. Be the person who shows others what's possible. Be the living proof that minds can be reprogrammed, that old patterns can be broken, that transformation is real. This is your moment. This is your call. This is your invitation to freedom. Everything you need is already within you. All 16 laws, all the wisdom, all the capacity for change. You just have to choose to use it. Will you? Will you take this seriously? Will you commit to the practice? Will you become someone for whom these laws are not just concepts but lived reality? I hope you will. The world needs more people who are free, more people who don't react from wounds, more people who respond from wisdom, more people who've done the work of reprogramming their minds and can walk through chaos with peace. Be one of those people. Start today. The 16 brutal laws are yours now. Use them, live them, and watch as your entire life transforms from the inside out. Thank you for walking this path with me. Thank you for having the courage to look at these uncomfortable truths. Thank you for being willing to do the work. Your commitment to your own transformation is the most important thing you can do, not just for yourself, but for everyone whose life you touch. Go now. Practice, transform, and become the free, wise, unshakable person you were always meant to be. The 16 laws have been given. The rest is up to you.